Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good afternoon.
It is Monday, May 15th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. New video this week. I wanted to try doing like essays and stuff and have a little bit more on camera stuff. So the first one was 3 little tiny things where I was like, not really ranting, 3 mini essays about things that video game executives said that bothered me. This time, I wanted to argue, because it's something that I believe, that cosmetics are gameplay. So people often talk about cosmetics not being gameplay, whatever. I wrote an essay about that. We should
the purchase of or just cosmetics?
No, just cosmetics in general.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I think that's a no-brainer. You're right.
But I wanted to. Well, thank you. I guess I should just delete the essay.
No.
That's
no.
Tyler.
No.
Why don't you think of something else,
Let's just kill the podcast now. We'll just tear it all down.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm glad you agree. No, because I wanted to. Cosmetics have become so associated with like live service monetization and whatnot, and especially with Diablo, because I remember one of the things they've said about Diablo 4 is that it's not. It's just cosmetics. It doesn't affect gameplay, but I think it does, because I think cosmetics are a part of gameplay. And so in this essay, I'm going to argue why I think that. I have some not evidence, but I have some anecdotal evidence, I guess. Some stories about how I've played games.
Opinions.
To back up. Yeah, anecdotal evidence is probably opinions. Thank you, Connor. That's a better way of putting it. And I get into the economics of the games industry in a little bit. So that'll be done. Today's Monday. That'll be done probably Wednesday. Because the recording was about an hour and a half, and that was with all my mess ups and stuff. So I have to edit it down, get all the good takes. And so not sure how long, it may be about 30-minute video. But we'll post it. We'll put it on the social medias. Richard.
What's up?
Your gaming...
Please go check out gamingdiscourse.fm.
You did a lot of modern stuff this week.
I did do
past week. Sorry.
Yes. And I think I'll have some more modern stuff this week too. I try to find. So my show is we highlight video game music, old and new. Some of our favorites and some of the best ever made. You'll find critiques, trivia, etc. It's just a very, very nice pseudo radio show. But yeah, I originally tried to the first, I would say 8-9 episodes. I was just finding weird stuff that nobody's ever heard, because that's the stuff that gets looked over. But now it's kind of, maybe I should start doing like more modern stuff, more stuff that people recognize, and at least 1 or 2 tracks. So I've been trying to find that good middle ground here.
I'll tell you this much. It seems like every era I know of songs from like every era of gaming that is just phenomenal. The original Metal Gear.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Of course I want to put that on, but I don't want to put it on now. You know, it's
sure.
I don't want to proverbially blow my load. You know, it's just I try to wait for, I guess, the right moments to play specific songs. So
go check that out. We're gonna. Does anybody want to talk about a game before?
The big one?
Before we talk about Zelda.
I'll talk about Jedi Order a little more.
All right, go ahead.
Bannerlords, but go ahead.
Sure. I think Jedi Order has, Survivor. I think I don't want to go as far as to say solved every problem I had with the first game, but I think that it is enticing me to play more, because they've kind of fine-tuned things that I didn't click with on the first game, which I enjoy a lot. And last week, I know I stated that I kind of have this like a flippant relationship with Star Wars. I like Star Wars a lot, but I'm not very attached to its story, attached to its things.
Sure.
But there are some things that I do find weird. Because I guess as a series that's been along for so long, there's things that you kind of accept and things that kind of like are not necessarily hard rules, but it's like, no, this is a very important moment and this should be like cemented. And one of the biggest things is, of course, Order 66. And at one point in Star Wars, up until after the prequels, there were no Jedis. And now there are plenty of Jedi.
They really need to stop putting games and movies and shows after Order 66 focal pointed with Jedi.
And this is a problem with media and commerce, right? Because it's the same thing with like Star Trek is Kirk and Spock. And then it's like, well, actually, Kirk and Spock were like war heroes slash superheroes for 10 years up until they got to the Enterprise. It's like, okay, well,
really?
now it's just silly. Because instead of just leaving the characters alone, they have to incorporate it. And the reason that happens is because
fans want more,
some J. Jonah Jameson executive, the kids like Spock.
Pictures of Spider-Man.
Pictures of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens. So it's like you pitch a game to Andrew Wilson, who has a ham sandwich for a creative mind, and it's like, hey, man, we're going to set a Star Wars game. Does it take place during the movies? Well... Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Good.
right.
Sell it to the kids. Bro.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because this takes place when the Empire is taken over. Like Death Star hasn't happened yet. Saw Gerrera is still around, etc. Yeah. And I'm gonna get a little spoilery if that's fine. But it's once again for me, it's just Star Wars, so it's not like you're gonna. But yeah, we start to kind of deal with Cal finds some High Republic stuff. Like find some High Republic.
Okay. Cool.
Finds a High Republic droid with memories of like a couple of High Republic Jedis, which I was kind of like, wow, this is cool because we know next to nothing about like we do know stuff about High Republic, but it's not touched on in the mainstream media of Star Wars. So it's really neat. You end up finding a character who's been suspended in a very long time, who ends up becoming evil. And it's just like, oh, okay, so we have another like Sith running around, which obviously he'll be dealt with by the end of the game.
Sure.
But it is just, it's so easy to just make another one. Like to just, here's another Sith guy, like who's apparently like super crazy powerful.
And that's something that's bothered me is like every Jedi story that has come out since episode 3. They've always had a Sith counterpart, and it's like, so the Sith were supposed to be gone and hiding, but not really.
Yeah,
but not really.
Right, yeah, because there's only like two, like the power of two
Order
and all
66.
that.
They killed everybody except for these thousands of Jedi.
Yeah. Which I totally accept some surviving.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes,
There would be some survivors, but
We know of a few.
but I mean, the way that it's being portrayed now is Order 66 was not that successful.
Apparently, yeah. So.
Exactly. Yes, it does sort of lessen like the impact of
that scene in the
movie,
movies.
which that movie isn't all that great, but whatever. But yes, you are correct.
But moving on from I guess the story content, your abilities you have, your upgrade paths, the exploration, like all of it works very well together. And I wouldn't go as far as to say that it excels in anything. I just think it works to its own advantage. And if a specific game didn't come out this year, then, it might have a chance to win a game award here or two. But there's a lot of games that could win a Game of the Year awards today or this year, but probably won't happen. Yeah,
sure,
but
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's good so far, and I will try to get more through it. The characters are all great. All the characters are really entertaining and unique, and have their own attractive personalities, and I would like to see more. And so that's it. I've just been playing that and juggling the other game we're about to talk about.
Connor, do you have a quick Banner Lords story?
Yes. So the character I told you about last week, Act-Blizz was his name. Yeah. I couldn't remember it last week because it's a weird name. Died in battle.
With you?
With me.
Oh.
And I partially feel responsible because I was leading the army that fought against him. Yeah.
So you knew which moves to make. That chapter is closed now.
I didn't want him to die. Like, I don't know if like I specifically killed him or he just like got killed by some random schmuck in the battle.
It doesn't specifically tell you. It just says he died.
Because at this, like, at any point during the battle, like 20 people are dying a second.
Yeah.
So it's like the kill log is just scrolling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So names just fly by. But before the battle, it showed you like who's commanding each side, what generals are there, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to talk with them for a little bit, three dialogue options. Anyway, and then after the battle, there's a few people that are captured.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a few people possibly died. So I was like, all right, let's go check out, in the encyclopedia, like what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he died in the battle. So
yeah. Poor guy. Hopefully you went fast.
Had a good run. That's a really cool immersion story though. So, and it got me really interested in Bannerlords, but there's just too much other stuff playing. I desperately am trying to find a quote from a character in Pillars 2, because, and I'm tempted to like have you guys just talk about a movie or something real quick, so I can go get my deck and launch the game because I know where to find the quote. It'll only take a second, but
it's been a second.
I don't think I'm going to do it.
I know I'm being facetious.
I was going to say, to circle back to stories about Jedi, if they're going to continue to make stories about Jedi, just turn the dial back 10 years and just set it during the Clone Wars.
Yeah,
that way you have all the Jedi you need. You have infinite number of bad guys.
Battles.
And
campaigns that happen.
And if you wanted to, have a bit of more of a tragic ending, you have Order 66 right there, even though with the track record of Jedi surviving Order 66, the main character probably will survive.
Yeah. And that's the people are so afraid to go too far into the future because then you're steering the ship in a certain direction, as opposed to the safety of knowing that if you do something in the past, the future is always set in stone, because you have the movies. Now, The Rise of Skywalker was horrible, so the movies are kind of, at least the sequel trilogy is kind of a joke, at least the back half.
You mean you didn't like that Palpatine survived, quote, somehow?
No, I did not. Star Trek has Star Trek has the same problem, and Star Trek it's even more egregious because Star Trek is all about exploration and and the first episode
connecting with people
and the first episode of Next Generation, Picard's final line before the episode ends is, "Let's find what's out there, engage." Right? That's the idea. But they're so concerned with like drawing fans in, as if fans have never been interested in a series that had new characters before DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, that they have to like rope it in, and it's just because executives are dumbasses, basically. So let's talk about. I'm not gonna find this quote.
It was a good one, though.
It was so good. Do you want to talk about Star Wars for a minute?
Here's what we'll do. All right. After the podcast, you go find the quote. We'll just splice it in right here. We don't have to actually pause.
Okay.
Because
that was awkward.
Yeah, okay. I can manipulate
it's such a good
and
quote,
I can edit.
It's one of those quotes that makes you like fall in love with the character. Anyway, okay.
But we're not going to talk about it because neither of us heard the quote till later.
So let's maybe I'll just do it next week and we'll just have that awkward silence.
Yeah, we'll cold open with that quote all dramatic and everything.
Or Connor will just pull like a dumb quote from some horrible movie. Like, this is the quote I love.
Palpatine survives.
Yeah, exactly. What's your name? Ray Skywalker. It was brilliant, guys. Okay. Anyway.
Infinite ammo.
Okay. So let's talk about Tears of the Kingdom. Pretty good. I give it a solid
Legend of
7 out
Zelda
of
and the
10.
War Crimes Committed.
I'm kidding. Where do we start? Where do we begin? So
I don't know where to begin.
Let's begin at the end of Breath of the Wild. So you kill Calamity Ganon.
Yes.
And then
which isn't actually Ganon, it's like the essence of
and then
whatever.
The writers panic because the game sells really well and now they have to write a sequel.
So I will say this, the setup to Tears of the Kingdom is incredibly convenient.
Yes.
Sure, yeah.
It's Sam Drake convenient. But that's fine because Zelda has never been to me I don't know, in the games that I have experienced, it's never been about like the plot. I don't know if any Zelda games have ever told like some incredible, super duper intricate. I'm sure they've told thoughtful stories and stuff like that. But in terms of something like Lord of the Rings, where there's like huge morality, and I just don't think it's ever been anything like that. So, and it's always been somewhat minimalistic, especially Breath of the Wild, right?
Yes.
There was really interesting characters, really interesting storytelling, but that's just a different type of storytelling, right? And it's not less or better than other games, right? Pillars of Eternity has like a crazy deep story and it's just ridiculous and all these different gods and tons of dialogue, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's better because there's more of it. Yeah. It's just, it tells its story differently.
It does what it can. It does what it can to suit the gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. Maybe we can start there. So what made Breath of the Wild, I think, special, and part of Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring have been the two sort of big deviations from your standard, like, safe, quote unquote, AAA open worlds, right? And with Breath of the Wild, what they did is you could go anywhere, you could climb anywhere. It was emergent in the sense that if you wanted to, as soon as you exited the tutorial area, you could go fight Ganon. You didn't have to. There was no like barrier to stop you. Although you likely would just die. So it was,
right, if you weren't.
It was like up to you how much to do stuff. So there was a freedom there. And scale is the other thing, right? You look off in the distance, you see a mountain, you see a volcano. On the volcano, you see a giant lizard. You're not sure what. Eventually, you have to like fight that giant lizard, and then it's like the machine sets down. You have to go inside of it and shut it off or whatever. And then that lizard fires a beam that goes from the mountain all the way across the open world.
That's right,
to the very middle, and you kind of see that the whole time. So scale, I think, is another thing that made Breath of the Wild, this huge space, but you knowing that this huge space was all part of the game space, and that's really exciting and interesting. Yeah. I feel like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom this is gonna sound weird. It feels less like a sequel and more like a Breath of the Wild 2.0. I know that seems like a contradiction.
No, I get what you're saying.
Do you get what I'm saying? Because again, what they've taken is they've sort of like, if you look at Halo and Halo 2, the big difference between the two Halos is, in the first Halo, your gun was the assault rifle, right? It just sprayed bullets everywhere. So precision wasn't really, there was the sniper rifle, sure, but your like main weapon was the assault rifle, spraying bullets. Halo 2, what is the weapon that I think is the most associated with Halo 2? It's the battle rifle. Yeah. So all of a sudden you go from spraying bullets everywhere to 3-shot precision, right?
Which is interesting because the cover had the SMG on it.
The cover had the SMG, right? And the SMG was sort of
that
was sort of its version of the assault rifle because the assault rifle wasn't in Halo 2. So they changed the paradigm, right? Yeah. It went from this like spray bullets everywhere, and the Whack-'em Smacker pistol had a scope on it, but it wasn't as accurate as the battle rifle. So the paradigm changed, and then they did that again somewhat with Halo 3, with like equipment and stuff. Yeah. But in Breath of the Wild or in Tears of the Kingdom, what have they done? They've taken the scale and they've pulled that and made it bigger. So now you have islands in the sky, and now you fall from those islands and you just free falling, and you just look for water, right? The interactivity in the world. You like I walked up, so you have your new abilities, your new magical abilities. And I think everything in Breath of the Wild was stuff that like Link did to the world. You threw a bomb at something, the ice block, so you could run across water. In this one, all the abilities are things that Link takes from the world and then incorporates to himself in a sense, right? So you cut down a tree, you fuse it with another tree, you have a boat. Yeah. You find a rock, you fuse it to your sword, you have a stone axe or hammer, whatever, right? So now it's like, it does the same thing where in Breath of the Wild, you're running around and you're thinking, oh, I could throw a bomb over here. I could use the ice block over here. You're still thinking like that, but it's like the opposite direction. I could take that rock. I could cut down that tree. I could reverse this thing and go the other way. There was this really cool moment where I was running up, hold on to your thought. I was running up on a goblin base, whatever they're called, boglins. Boglins are little toys from the 80s. And they had a trap where like a giant spike ball was rolling down. Yeah. So I was like, oh, shoot. And then it dawned on me. I was like, wait a second. And I went to my skills and I got the reverse tool. Yeah. And I reversed the spike ball. So instead of it rolling down the hill at me, it rolled back up toward the base and right into some of the boglin dudes that were running down behind it. And I was like, that's so freaking awesome. I could have also used the fuse and like fused it to my sword while it was rolling at me. So go ahead, Connor.
I was going to say, the way you described Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom, personally, my time playing it, the abilities seem more limited now. Because when you were describing what you're doing, you used you talked about 3 different abilities with Breath of the Wild, but you only talked about one in your little example there with Tears of the Kingdom until you talked about sending the spike ball back up. 2 of the abilities are very situational. There's the reverse time one. I really haven't used that outside of dungeon. And the travel through stuff above you, I always forget I have.
Yeah.
They don't seem as versatile. It really seems like their focus going into development for abilities was building, was letting people build things.
Sure.
And the other, I can't even remember there's fuse, reverse time,
and I haven't. I think there's a few abilities I haven't unlocked yet or something because the
wheel's incomplete.
The wheel is incomplete for me. So we're all about 5-ish hours into the game. We're past the tutorial level, so we're not that far. So this is all somewhat first impressions.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, no. Those 2 abilities, the reverse time and the ascend, they seem very situational, like they were afterthoughts, or they were initially thought up, but then they focused a lot more on the construction part of the gameplay rather than the other 2 aspects.
See, so I somewhat I'm gonna go Bill Lumberg. I'm gonna have to disagree with you. No, because I am constantly looking for reasons to use that ability where you go up. Just when I saw a bridge the other day while I was playing, and there was one of those big troll guys, right? And I was like, oh shoot, if I walk across this bridge, I'm gonna have to fight this guy. And I was like, wait a second. I can go under the bridge, zoom up behind him on the other side of the bridge,
and just keep going.
Just pass around him. Fortunately, there was water underneath the bridge, so I was like, I could probably take the time to build a raft and then get the raft down there and do it and all that. But I was like, I'll just go do something else for now. But I'm constantly looking for different ways to ascend or different ways to interact with the world with those abilities. Now, I think, so I guess it's just a matter of perspective, because it seems like you haven't had an incentive to use them, where I am sort of looking. Now, maybe as I play, it doesn't give me the incentive, and then I will align more with you that it's sort of an ability that isn't used as much. That was a problem in Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite had the grapple hook, which was like, oh, this is great, grapple hook's amazing, and then the rest of the abilities were like, you can dash, but it's never really that useful. You can throw down a shield, but it's never really that useful. So the other abilities were like things that were sort of afterthoughts, while the grapple hook was the only thing that was sort of baked into the gameplay. So that could be true. I haven't read reviews or anything. I don't know if that's how other people feel. I will say that I haven't encountered... like, building is fun, but yeah, I will say that I have not encountered, like, how do I get past this? I'll build this. It's like, it's fun. I built a cart once, and then it's like, okay, but everywhere else I go, I just don't need to build a cart.
I primarily find myself building bridges to get over obstacles because I don't want to take the time to climb.
And that's
take the time to figure out the puzzle. I'm like, fuck it, I'll build a bridge.
Oh, sorry. Here's another way that I use the reverse thing. This is a technique that I think you're supposed to do, because I have found myself in a situation where the only way out was to do this. But I was at a puzzle where it had one of those wind turbine things, those wind turbine machines, fans, whatever. And there was a jump I had to make. Like, it was just flat, and then there was a wall that you had to go up to the second level, but it was too tall for Link to make the jump. I was like, okay, so I put the wind turbine thing there, I jumped on top of it, tried to use that to jump up, wouldn't work. But you can't, the wind turbine thing, you can turn it on, but then it just blows everywhere. There was nothing to connect it to like lift up a platform. So I was like, well, what the hell do I do with this thing? So what I did was I put the wind turbine thing down. I went to my Ultra Hand, which is where you can pick things up and move them. I moved it up, held it for a second, and then moved it back down. Then I stood on it. Then I went to my reverse, and I hit the reverse, and it moved it up, and I just created a little elevator, and that's how I got past that little section.
Yeah, and that's one of the amazing things about the game, is it actually records everything you move for a certain amount of time, and then you could just use reverse and use it that way.
I don't know how far you guys ever got into the Talos Principle, but the Talos Principle had that mechanic, and you had to set up past versions of yourself to help solve puzzles, which is really cool. But anyway, so you were about to say something, Richard.
The whole form of Tears of the Kingdom is strictly a consequence of the things people found out they could do in Breath of the Wild. So it is very great for those who want to mess around with that type of stuff. And it's insane stuff has been made so far, and incredible minds have used it for their advantage. But when it does, for someone like, I guess me, who I enjoy, I've played every Zelda. I've beaten almost all of them. I've played almost all of them, but, and I wouldn't say like I'm dying for like an old school Zelda adventure, but for somebody who has played all of those and is very used to those, when I start to build stuff, I get very like, how long do I have to keep doing this? Because I don't like, this isn't what I'm, I'm here for the like run around and run around adventure type situation. And that's what one of the, although yes, I'm a bit critical about it. Yeah, the opening sequence, the introduction for Zelda, for the cause of this game is convenient. It was approached in a way that was much more interesting than a lot of other Zelda games has made their story. And so it did get me excited because I was like, whoa.
It was creepy at the beginning.
It was very,
it was legitimately creepy.
It was very moody. It was very... It was very cinematic, like, and that is something that throughout all of the history of Zelda is something that I've wanted to lean into more because I do enjoy the cinematic experience of video games. But I told myself very quickly, like, no, don't get excited because it's not what this is going to be, And although there have been X amount of cutscenes, since then, it is all about seeing what you can do in this world. And I hope that as I continue to explore more, there will be more reasons to look for things like I had in like Elden Ring, because I didn't have that in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, I was not interested in the world I was given because of, I guess, the power that the Switch has. It's like Breath of the Wild is beautiful in its own right, but also if I look at like that mountain distance, it's like smooth. It's like smooth rock. It's like well, what's over there? I don't want to. It's not interesting. Unlike Elden Ring, where it's just everything was like, what is that? Whoa, what is that? That's cool. Yeah. So I hope that in Tears of the Kingdom, as I'm now on like the world towards the bottom, there is a lot more of that. I've noticed there is a lot more, at least around Hyrule Castle. There is a lot more of like, oh, what's that? I'll probably go check that out eventually. But I hope that continues, and I hope that grows into something more. But all of the abilities I have now, all of the things I can do are a direct consequence of what other smarter people have been able to do in the first game. And they decided to cater to that, which is not an issue because I think that's great for everyone else who like wants to have a creative mind and they can make stuff. But yeah, that's as far as gameplay goes.
I would agree with you guys that I would be disappointed if it didn't incorporate those things more into the world. It's fun to build a boat, and explore with a boat, but it's like, okay, but give me a reason, right? And that, again, Halo Infinite, one of my criticisms of Halo Infinite, and what's so sad is because Halo Infinite was like just a couple design decisions away from just being phenomenal. But like you could call in, eventually you could unlock the Wasp, which was like the UNSC's version of the Banshee, right? Their flying vehicle. So what could you do with it? You could fly places, but there wasn't a mission where it was like, oh, to do this, you're going to have a Wasp. Yeah. It was like there were a couple missions. There was one place in the map where to get there, you had to have the Wasp, but that was just to get there. Once you got there, it was just normal enemies, right? So it's like, okay. So... or tanks, there was one mission in the game where you had to have a tank. It was sort of a standalone mission, but like in the open world, a tank was just an option, as opposed to the open world presenting a challenge that required a tank or would incentivize a tank or something like that. So that made the open world feel one note and sort of boring. And once you unlocked those high power weapons and high power vehicles, it was just like, okay, it's just one more thing that I can have if I want, but I don't really need. And that was a big fault in Halo Infinite's open world. So with like Zelda, with Tears of the Kingdom, the Ultra Hand ability fusing things together and making bridges and stuff like that. That's all awesome. That's all super awesome. But I would agree, if once you're 20 hours in, it's like the only times you use the Ultra Hand are because you just don't feel like jumping over here or something. That would be disappointing. I would want it to present me with challenges where you had to use those things to sort of overcome something. And Breath of the Wild, I think, I don't know, Breath of the Wild, again, because Breath of the Wild was its own thing. So it was the first time we were experiencing this type of Zelda game, right? So now we're sort of replaying another Breath of the Wild 2.0. So finding and crafting weapons and discovering this open world isn't as new as it was in the first one, right? Because it's not like a complete huge. I got to be careful. It is a sequel, but it's not a huge paradigm shift, right? As the first one. So it's like so its abilities, I think, matter more than the ones in the first game.
It's not I don't mean this phrase in a negative way. It is a half step. It is not.
Yes.
Whereas, and even then, that's being redacted because there's so much.
And
shit
there's a
you
whole
could do.
underground
There's so much
area
shit,
too
yeah,
that
yeah.
I haven't seen.
Yeah, there's so much stuff you can do in this game, and honestly, the stuff that you can do, the stuff it keeps track of, is quite remarkable for the Switch itself. But that is an argument that came across when God of War Ragnarok came out, where it's just like, oh, it's just like, is it really a sequel? It's just kind of more of the same. Where it's
That's
just
a
like,
really good comparison.
It's like, yes, it is a sequel. You're continuing the story. There's, it may be more the same,
It is
but
technically a sequel.
right. But it is, a sequel doesn't necessarily mean you change everything about the game.
No,
It's just a continuation of either a story or just, I guess we'll say additions to the main game or improvements to the main game, which I think Zelda is doing and is not negative connotation whatsoever.
And I think what God of War, because again, I think that's a good comparison. God of War Ragnarok was not, because again, God of War reinvented the series, and it's like, okay, where do you go from here? Because you just hit a grand slam to win the World Series. Where do you go from here, right? So in Ragnarok, what did they do? They changed up the combat. Atreus was a playable character all of a sudden, so he had much more focus on him as a character. Some of the side activities they changed up. It did not have as much of an emphasis on in-game activities. So it's like they sort of changed some things around. And also there was more places to go as opposed to like, there's a lot of things to do in Midgard, but in the first game, Midgard I think there was a lot more to do. I may be wrong about that, but I feel like there was a lot more to do in Midgard in the first one as there was in the second one.
Right.
Second one, I felt like there were more places you could go. The things were more spread out. So I think that's a good example. God of War Ragnarok, sort of a God of War 2018 2.0 type thing, as opposed to like huge paradigm shift. Or like the difference between Resident Evil 3 and 4, I think is probably...
That's a bigger jump.
That's a
way bigger jump, yes.
And again, like Halo and Halo 2, a big jump there because you different weapon, different combat style. You have dual wielding, so you have things that really shake up the formula. Where this one, the formula is in place. So like whenever Elden Ring 2 comes out, like how are you going to top that first Elden Ring world? I don't know if you necessarily can. So what do they do to shake it up or add to it, right? So yeah, I think I've said everything I want to say about Tears of the Kingdom. Again, I need to play more. It's I'll tell you this, it's a great contrast with Pillars 2 because there's like, Zelda never says anything, so I play 2 hours of Tears of the Kingdom and it's just, and then I play Pillars 2 and it's like, let me go talk to this guy. 40 minutes later, okay, the lecture on colonialism is done, which is fine because that's great, but completely different. Looks like you were going to say something.
I'll say that I wish that I wish there was more in the sky, because there have been too many times where I've launched myself up with one of the towers, and it's like, oh, there's a couple tiny dot islands that I can get to immediately right here.
With not much on there.
With not much on them. So I guess I'll just go back down to the ground.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the sky thing, because I have seen a lot of it. Kind of reminds me of Castlevania, because there's like huge, like almost castle-looking mountain
that are
floating
like
islands in the distance.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many of those are scenery and how many of those I can actually go to. I hope you can go to a lot of them because that's what really intrigued me. But yeah, so the only Sky Island I have been to is the tutorial one, which is really cool. Performance wise, I have constant frame rate drops. Now I am playing on a 4K TV that the Switch is docked to, and the Switch, I switched between 720 and 1080 to see if I got a performance boost. I didn't really. Now, they released a recent update like yesterday, and I haven't played for a few days, so I don't know if things will be better. But yeah, how have you guys fared performance-wise?
Mostly fine. I've had stutters, but they were very quick and over, like after a bit.
I don't think I've had any performance issues, but I am playing on the OLED Switch, so I don't know if that's making any difference because there's slight hardware improvements on that.
I don't know off the top of my head if there are slight hardware improvements in the OLED.
Not to my knowledge. No, just a better screen and a 64 gig hard drive update.
Okay.
But I mean, I didn't really look into it much. So.
Yeah. Okay. I don't remember.
I thought there was, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
If you're rendering to an OLED screen, I don't know if you have to bump up some of the hardware. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know if I'm not even going to talk about it. Richard, you going to say something? You said
Yeah, I am very excited to play this game, and I have as soon as I got into the ground level, I have had more of an interest in building things, not to assist me to get around. Like I see a horse and I'm like, oh, I could tame it, or I could just make like a little car. And it's so funny that it's also funny that like the stuff is just laying around for you.
Yeah.
But it's funny because there's a sign there. It's like, hey, this stuff is for the like reestablishment of Hyrule when we start building again. So like just let you know that's why that's here.
I got to commandeer this basket over here.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna use it to build my little
cart that I'm gonna ditch in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's gonna explode on me.
Use as a vehicle of destruction.
But I didn't realize how much and it's so convenient that they have this robot civilization in the sky that is created by the Zonai, because they themselves has created futuristic like weaponry that's going to help you later on. It's just like
it's definitely Sam Drake. Like it's definitely very convenient.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a criticism. That's fine. Because again,
at the end of the day, it's a video game.
Well, yeah, and it's also I don't think Legend of Zelda has ever been about some intricate plot where things super duper matter. I think it's more about sort of the spirit of the narrative, the spirit of adventure, Link's connection to Zelda, that sort of thing. Good versus evil, right? Much less like we're not talking Succession here, where it's like you've got 4 siblings and everything matters every episode. We're not, so okay. Are we
Breath of the Wild, or not Breath of the Wild, but Zelda games tend to be a little bit more black and white.
It's minimalistic storytelling, which is it's fine. There should be minimalistic storytelling. Gaming is better because of how Zelda tells its story. If you gave Link a bunch of dialogue, I don't know if it would hit.
Well, if you give Link a bunch of dialogue, eventually you get, well, excuse me, princess.
Yeah.
I could go either way too, because it's like like giving Isaac Clarke a voice in Dead Space 2 was an excellent choice.
Yeah,
it wasn't as much in Dead Space 3, but but
that's true. Okay, are we ready to? We got a lot of news to get into, so
let's
get
it.
Go?
Yep,
let's go. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. The European Commission has okayed the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger. The Commission says recent commitments by Microsoft to fully address competition concerns they identified and represent significant improvement for cloud gaming as compared to the current situation. The Commission's preliminary investigation found Microsoft could harm competition in the distribution of video games, including multi-game subscription services and cloud gaming. To remedy the cloud gaming issue, Microsoft offered licensing commitments for a period of 10 years. The details of these licensing commitments are a free license to consumers in the EEA that allows them to stream via any cloud service of their choice all current and future Activision Blizzard PC and console games for which they have a license, and a free license to cloud gaming service providers to allow EEA-based gamers to stream any Activision Blizzard PC and console games. Brad Smith, who is the Microsoft president, said on Twitter after the announcement, quote, "The European Commission has required Microsoft to license popular Activision Blizzard games automatically to competing cloud gaming services. This will apply globally and will empower millions of consumers worldwide to play these games on any device they choose," end quote. Okay, so I have no idea what this means, because in the United States, it's going to an FTC court. They're going to appeal it in Great Britain, but the EU, and I don't know where on terms of like a market the EU is going to be for this kind of thing. I assume it's probably like top 10 in the world, which is not a high barrier to break. But as far as like influencing this thing to go Microsoft's way in the US and in Britain, I don't know. I do wonder what Britain would have, because I don't know if Britain responded to that.
The CMA did.
Did they respond to this?
They responded to that.
Okay,
yeah.
Do you have it in front of you?
I can pull it up real quick.
Because if you want to paraphrase it, you can, because I did not see that.
They basically said, "This is a dumb decision. Fuck off."
Okay, well, that's one hell of a paraphrase.
Let me see. Here we go.
A little bit more British than that.
Right.
At the end.
The UK. Oh wow, this is kind of long. Bear with me. Our response, blah, blah. The UK, US, and European competition authorities are unanimous that this merger would harm competition in cloud gaming. The CMA concluded that the cloud gaming needs to continue as a free competitive market to drive innovation and choice in this rapidly evolving sector. It's not. Microsoft's proposals accepted by the European Commission today would allow Microsoft to set the terms and conditions for this market for the next 10 years. They would replace a free, open, and competitive market with one subject to ongoing regulation of the games Microsoft sells, the platforms to which it sells them, and the conditions of the sale. This is one of the reasons the CMA's independent panel group rejected Microsoft's proposals and prevented this deal. While we recognize and respect that the European Commission is entitled to take a different view, the CMA stands by its decision.
Okay, that's
so it's exactly like I said. This is fucking stupid. You suck.
They disagree with their rationality then.
Which
I am not a huge fan of that, because I don't like the word license, because the word license is one of those words that's abused by corporations to take stuff down, to render ownership of like music and TV and movies obsolete and complicated and tied to accounts and region bullshit and subscription bullshit and copyright bullshit. So it's cool that they provided that commitment, but at the same time, I just don't like the sound of it, because it just sounds like something that could easily be taken advantage of, or the spirit of like open competition and trying to get everybody to play everywhere is false, is sort of a false pretense. So I'm not going to sit here and say on a legal basis that the EU was wrong, because I don't have the expertise to say that. But again, I'm against the premise. I don't think companies should not. I don't know. I don't want companies to get other big companies. I just think that's bad in general.
Well, I've only gotten so much information since all the information came out for today, especially the CMA's response. But
this was only a few hours ago. This is this morning. Yeah. So
there are people online who have discussed that if the CMA still stands by their decision and refuses anything, the deal will probably not go through. Because
Britain's a big enough market or whatever?
Yes, it is a big enough market that either they will have to gut the deal, which will make it not worth it for Microsoft, or change something about it that will just be more of a headache than anything else. So,
I wonder if Microsoft would be open to just I don't know how, not a legal expert, not a lawyer, but again, King is what Microsoft wants here, right? And King is the thing that none of these, I'm sure they're talking about it in their reports and stuff, but everyone, both the CMA and the EU have zeroed in on cloud gaming, which is somewhat surprising. because it's rapidly growing relative to, I don't know, peanut butter and jelly futures. Like, okay, relative to that, sure, but relative to gaming itself, it's still completely unknown. So if Microsoft were to, I don't know, somehow exclude themselves from like the cloud gaming sector somehow, other than making 10-year commitments, I wonder if they'd be willing to do that, because to me, the goal with this merger was never, we want to get a giant foothold in the cloud sector. It was, we want King. And yeah, Call of Duty is really nice too. That's the cherry on top, I guess. But the chocolate, the sundaes, the banana, that's King. So I don't know. I find that interesting. And that's all I'm going to say. There was another thing I'm not a big fan of that the EU said. Okay, right here. So this is talking about their decisions to sort of let this deal go through. Straight from the EU's report, quote, even if Microsoft did decide to withdraw Activision's games from the PlayStation, this would not significantly harm competition in the consoles market. Even if Call of Duty is largely played on console, it is less popular in the EEA than in other regions of the world, and is less popular in the EEA within its genre compared to other markets. Therefore, even without being able to offer this specific game, Sony could leverage its size, extensive games catalogs, and market position to fend off any attempt to weaken its competitive position. So I think that I didn't like that, because it sounds like because you're relying on Sony to like figure out how to best Call of Duty, and if they can't do you're saying Sony figure it out instead of, and I think I'm more aligned with Microsoft, maybe you just don't need this. Does that make sense? Because what the EU is saying here is, sorry, EU gamers, sucks for you if this happens. But there are so many things in gaming where it has sucked for because game companies have decided to do it, Yeah. So of course this would happen. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, if we were making a wall, right? Pink Floyd, brick in the wall, and we were putting bricks for all the shit the games industry does, the EU sounds like they're okay with this one brick because it's just a single brick. But it's like, have you seen the wall and all the other shit these companies do? Because if you have, I don't know, you're just giving them more power. So I didn't like that rationality behind like why. I understand it because it's capitalism, and I do like the sentiment of putting the onus on PlayStation and saying, hey, PlayStation, figure it out. I think that sentiment is good, but I also think it's in a sense misguided, because it's not like Microsoft did this because it capitalismed better. It did this because it dumped a shit ton of money and was just, it just traded for Aaron Rodgers, right? The Jets are not amazing because they have Aaron Rodgers. They just traded for Aaron Rodgers.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Dumping a shit ton of money at something is capitalism.
But it's not in the sense that,
so in a sense, they capitalismed better because they had more money to dump at the problem.
But not in the sense that you like innovated and built a better product and presented value that consumers appeared to prefer over your competition. That sort of shit. It's not like that, right? It's more like, buying shit. But anyway, you're correct in a sense.
No, I'm fully correct.
Okay, whatever. You know what I'm saying, though.
Continue.
It's not a tactical. If you drop a nuke on Gandhi, you're not a tactical genius, right? You're not a genius at Civ 5. You just dropped a nuke on Gandhi. Okay,
well, it depends on if Gandhi has nukes or not.
We're gonna.
He'll drop one on you if you don't.
You got to take him out before he gets nukes, because he goes a little gun happy.
Is there anything else we wanted to say about this before we move on to other stuff?
It's just going to be interesting to see what happens in the coming months if Microsoft decides to continue to push this thing, or if their appeal goes through and what happens after that. But the story was interesting at first a year ago, and then now it's very tiring.
And by the way, let me just say, fuck PlayStation. screw them.
Oh, they're not. Yeah, they're not absolved.
So
either.
I'm not sitting here trying to defend PlayStation. I don't have a soft spot for PlayStation. Again, all these companies go straight to jail. It's morally correct to pirate Nintendo games. So just so we're clear, but I just don't want any of those companies to necessarily get a gigantic foot on one of the other ones. Okay, moving on. Valve has banned gambling in its code of conduct. In a list of things players should not do, gambling has been added. The code of conduct now reads, quote, players shall not engage in commercial activity. Examples of such prohibited behavior include posting advertisements, running contests, gambling, buying or selling Steam accounts, selling content, gift cards or other items, and begging. I'm not sure what begging refers to specifically. Like, I know what begging is definitionally, but in terms of like the act online, I'm not sure if it's like, please give me a free thing.
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
That's it.
Kotaku's Claire Jackson pointed out that back in 2022, the last of a string of lawsuits from 2016 over CSGO skin gambling was thrown out. We talked about the sort of relationship between Valve and CSGO skin gambling and stuff like that, weapon skin gambling. When People Make Games did their big video on it, which was an excellent piece of journalism. And I think, I don't know, I think Valve wants to keep it at an arm's distance. I don't think they necessarily like it, but I also think they definitely benefit from it, right?
Absolutely.
So, and I don't know what the difference is. Like, you ban it in the code of conduct. I don't know if it's banned in terms of service. I don't necessarily know from a legal standpoint what the difference between those two documents are, or why they're different documents. Maybe the terms of service is something legally you have to have. A code of conduct isn't. I don't know. But this is good. And I think I'm not necessarily against gambling in general, but I don't think it has a place in gaming. I don't see why. I definitely don't think it has a place on Twitch. We've talked about this in the past.
Does it have a place anywhere?
I think that's an interesting question. I think putting $10 on which team you think is going to win the game isn't the end of the world. I think having apps on everybody's phone and having people that are vulnerable to gambling addictions all over the world is much more of a problem. I think raises eyebrows.
I'm not trying to be combative here, but the way it's put in is the problem. It sounds like the way it is put into is, if you put $10, on a sports game,
sure,
whatever. But if it's integrated inside of the game itself, that is the problem, because it's like, the virtual Madden, brackets that they do, or
that I'm totally against,
or esports, whatever.
If you're talking gambling in general, globally, in all contexts, I think that's a much more complicated discussion. But within the context of games, I think of course I'm 1,000% against it. It has no place. That's not what video games should be. If you want to go to a casino, go to a casino. But I don't think the incentive set there is not gaming and experience and art and entertainment. It's just recurrent spending and bullshit like that. So so I think this is good, but I also think that Valve is covering their tracks. But I also think that they benefit from it in a way where they will not. Because if Valve wanted to, I think they probably have the money and the power to really clamp down and really shut down CSGO gambling.
Yeah.
I think they probably could. But they're not.
No, they're not. Of course not.
Steam Deck is amazing. Took a lot of money to build that sucker. I'm sure some of that money could be spent on. And I'm sure they've done certain things. But from what we know about Valve politically,
I was about to say, but that's a bit of oversight that I think Gabe Newell not agree with.
It's not an oversight; it may be a political standpoint. So I'm glad that they did this. This is the right thing to do. But I think they're also people at Valve are probably somewhat okay, because maybe they don't think it's their right or their place to regulate certain markets outside of their ecosystem. There you go. Do you guys want to say anything about Valve gambling?
ruins lives. we read too many stories about how many lives it's ruined.
This is true. This is true. Okay, Richard, want to tell us about Fullbright?
Update on the Fullbright story that we've been reporting on here and there the last year, but year and a half, 2 years. Anyways, background. In 2021, Polygon reported that Fullbright co-founder Steve Gaynor stepped down from creative lead on Open Roads, which is their next full game, following multiple allegations of mistreating Fullbright employees, particularly women. At the time, 12 former Fullbright employees said that they left the company partially due to Gaynor's behavior. Polygon also reported that Open Roads was behind schedule. Now, in a newsletter, Gaynor says it's no longer Fullbright's place to represent Open Roads, publicly saying, quote, "A lot has changed at Fullbright and on the Open Roads project, but after a great deal of consideration, it's just no longer Fullbright's place to represent Open Roads publicly going forward. It will be credited to the Open Roads team at launch and won't be covered further here," end quote. And on the allegations from over 2 years ago, Gaynor said, quote, "The last few years have shown me that my own strengths do not lie with attempting to manage a large project or direct the work of others. I was increasingly unhappy in that higher level role, and I let that affect how I acted towards people at the studio. It's something I really regret and should have managed to address sooner, but that didn't happen, and that's on me," end quote. He also said that he is working on a new Fullbright game as a solo developer.
I thought this whole thing was really weird and vague. And I didn't see if any Fullbright employees spoke out
For it.
And I didn't, and we haven't, Open Roads was something I completely forgot existed. Because there was
I can't remember what it is.
There was a Game Awards trailer. I think there was a Game Awards trailer. And then after that it did like disappear for a long time. And I don't know if that coincided with the original Polygon story. I do remember us talking about the original Polygon story. And that was right around the original Polygon story was when we were going through a string of stories about, we talked about toxicity at like AAA developers, but then we got, Scavenger Studio, Fullbright. What was the studio that made what's that?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember this trailer.
What was the other game called? Florence, the studio behind Florence.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yep.
The People Make Games did a video about that. So we had a string of stories about like toxicity and workplace abuse and stuff like that at smaller studios as well, at indie projects. So yeah, it's strange. It seemed, I don't know. It makes me wonder, like, if you're a Fullbright employee, how do you feel about this? I guess that you're working on a game, you're at a studio, suddenly you're told you're still working on this game, but you're not a part of Fullbright, or you are a part of Fullbright.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of strange. It's like, but how does that work? Are you still being paid? Like, are you just a part of a different company now?
And if
a bunch of weird questions.
And if he stepped down, what gives him the right to to say that?
Yeah, and he was a co-founder, and as far as I know, he is the only co-founder left at Fullbright. The other co-founders have gone on to do other things. One of them was one of the developers behind Where the Water Tastes Like Wine.
Oh yes.
And the other one, and there was a girl and a guy, a woman and a man, and I don't know what the woman went on to do. I don't remember, but anyway, so it's a very strange, somewhat
story, update,
vague update. But okay. Can we see?
Yeah.
We don't have tidbits.
I don't have tidbits. I'm sorry I failed you this week.
Do we want to play the sounder just for fun?
No.
Please?
No.
Oh, come on. Okay.
All right. Play it. I'll find something.
What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits. I
can't find any. Oh, cool. I found something real quick.
There you go. Here's a tidbit. All right.
So I follow a lot of preservationists,
of course,
or I try to. If I find anyone, I'm like, oh, cool. So someone took in a donation, Art of Nintendo Power on Twitter.
Oh,
they
cool.
took in a paperwork donation for the Nintendo Gameplay Counselor Archive. So in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. You would have the hotline tip if you were stuck on a game. You'd call Nintendo, and people would help you. I've seen a little bit of like the inside. There was a guy that they interviewed who like he had some exclusive like visuals of how it looked like inside of it. And it was very nice. They thick handbook. You'd find the game and like you'd walk people through it and stuff. It was wild.
awesome.
So the counselor kept all of their employment records, from reprimands for being late to quarterly reviews.
Oh my god!
Application for employment. Basically, like tons of the administration side of the Nintendo, like part of that from the early '90s. So they're gonna crawl through that and see what they can find. But I thought that was very interesting.
Who was that specifically?
Well, they didn't give a name. I don't think the person would want to give their name.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm sure there would still be punishment, and not punishments, but legal action for that. You know how Nintendo is.
No, I'm talking about the people that found it.
Art of Nintendo Power.
Art of Nintendo Power. Okay, thank you.
Art of NP on Twitter.
That's awesome. That's cool. I'd love preservation stories and releasing stuff.
It's very cool.
It's always so great. Okay, Connor, do you have a tidbit you want to?
No, I'm just
laughing.
I just found an article that's just showing the different ways people have started torturing Koroks and Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, I'll show you some other stuff for sure.
We've got crucified Koroks, and we've got all kinds of horrible things.
Tidbits that would have been like way more in depth, but it's enough time has passed that I'll forget about it later. But of course, there was GQ magazine did their 100 greatest games of all time.
I did not see this.
Yeah, and they actually reached out to developers and people in the gaming industry to like gauge what they were. The number one was Breath of the Wild. So
interesting. Okay,
but there are a lot of other good games on the list. I don't have it in front of me, but IGN posted a social media video in which they basically explained why they give so many 7s. And they deleted it very quickly because it made themselves look bad. But the two guys talking in it basically said, quote, "If you've never heard of the game, we probably wouldn't review it. And it probably isn't that good anyways." End quote.
That's rough. That's not great.
It is rough stuff.
That's not great. That's not great.
I think Nintendo... numbers. We got some numbers. Not MPD. Well, not... I don't know. I forgot what it's called again. It's not MPDs anymore.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Matt Piscatella. Not for...
The Switch console sold over 125 million units now. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has sold over 53 million units. Animal Crossing New Horizons over 40 million units, 42 million to be specific. Smash Ultimate over 31 million. Breath of the Wild almost 30 million at 29.81. And Pokemon Sword and Shield over 25
these are Nintendo
million.
numbers, so they're not reporting.
They're not reporting digital. This is physical
only. They're
only,
not reporting digital. Yeah, okay. Yeah. That makes much more sense. Okay, I was like, that seems low for Breath of the Wild. Yeah. It is low.
Forbidden West has sold over 8.4 million copies.
Horizon. Here's the thing, right? What did we talk about last week? Quality of content. And what has PlayStation done past 10 years? They've created a brand new IP, and that IP has gone on to sell barn burners, right? Mm-hmm. And good for Guerrilla. What's the game that they worked on? Killzone. Killzone got stale. Yeah. Wasn't that great. They went out, did something different.
Killzone was never great, really. I mean, Killzone was always fine. It was fine.
It was fine. I think probably my favorite one was maybe 3.
Actually, I've never gotten to any of the Sony first party. Like, I could not do Resistance either. I couldn't get into it.
Connor and I played through Resistance.
Oh god.
And I didn't do any of the other Resistances though. It was sort of PlayStation's. It felt like them trying to do Halo, because there was like vehicle sections and stuff like that.
It was awful. It was their attempt at being awful, and they succeeded.
Sure. I think it may still have. Okay. We're gonna end it. Unless anyone else has anything to say. No. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. New video soon. Gaming Discourse FM.
Thank you.
And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.